If you like to record walking videos with your DJI Osmo Pocket 3, you've probably noticed an up and down bobbing motion in your footage. While the 3-axis gimbal effectively stabilizes rotational movement, which are pan, tilt, and roll, it doesn't compensate for translational movements in the X, Y, and Z axes. This limitation becomes particularly noticeable in walking videos due to the natural up and down motion of human gait. One solution is to adopt a ninja walk technique, which can significantly reduce this bobbing effect. However, constantly altering your walking style while holding the Osmo Pocket 3 isn't always practical, especially during casual vlogging sessions. I think the amount of bobbing you get, even when you're not mindful of your walking technique, is generally acceptable for most video purposes. But if you're looking to create really smooth footage without adopting the stride of a professional camera operator, there do appear to be some ways of reducing the up and down motion. After doing some research, it seems like besides improving your walking technique, either using a Z-axis stabilizer or attaching your Osmo Pocket 3 to the end of a selfie stick are two ways that can help mitigate the bobbing effect in your videos. Over the past week, I've been comparing these two methods against standard handheld filming to assess how much difference they actually make. So let's start with the Z-axis stabilizer. I just got this really cheap one from Amazon. I have to say the quality on it isn't great, but it's good enough for testing whether it's really worth it or not in the first place. So the way this works is that as your hand goes up or down, the spring will react by stretching or compressing, kind of like the suspension of a car. And as a result, the vertical movements of the camera are not only dampened, but slowed down and spread out over a longer period of time. Another solution I found being mentioned in videos and forums was to attach the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 to the end of a selfie stick. It seems this can reduce the bobbing effect in two ways. Firstly, it creates a lever arm, which means that movements created at the handle result in smaller vertical shifts at the camera's end. Secondly, by extending the camera away from our body, we increase the moment of inertia, which once again slows down and smooths out rapid changes in up and down movements. For reference, I also decided to see how the bobbing motion compares when the Osmo Pocket 3 is mounted to my backpack. I know for a fact that this results in the most pronounced up and down motion, which was also pointed out in the comments on my previous video about backpack mounting, and it's actually one of the reasons I embarked on this journey in the first place. Since the camera is directly attached to your body, there's no way to actively compensate for your body's motion using your arms, wrists, or hands. The first test I conducted was to measure the amplitude and frequency of the oscillations while walking on the spot. Surprisingly, simply holding the Osmo Pocket 3 in my hand or mounting it to my backpack resulted in less vertical displacement compared to using the Z-axis stabilizer or the selfie stick. However, when comparing the recorded footage, it was clear that the Z-axis stabilizer and the selfie stick produced smoother results. To dig deeper, I plotted a graph of vertical displacement against time for each technique, and we can see that the Z-axis stabilizer and to a lesser extent the selfie stick both reduce the frequency of oscillations. Just by roughly counting the total number of oscillations in a 30-second period, we see that the Z-axis stabilizer produced the fewest, while the backpack mount produced the most. It's worth noting that the backpack-mounted Osmo Pocket 3 created very rapid movements. This is visible in the plot, where individual dots, each representing one frame in the 30 fps video, are distinctly noticeable, indicating significant camera movement between each frame. These findings suggest that it's the slowing down of vertical movements, rather than minimizing the actual amount of vertical displacement, that reduces the perceived bobbing effect in videos. This helps explain why the Z-axis stabilizer and selfie stick produce smoother looking footage despite creating potentially larger overall displacements. When it came to real-world testing, it was obvious that the backpack mounting method produced the most jarring up and down motion, consistent with our earlier test result that showed rapid, frequent movements with minimal damping using this method. handheld use of the Osmo Pocket 3 also produced noticeable bobbing, but not to the point of distraction for most viewers. However, this method would fall short for scenes requiring exceptionally smooth footage. It's important to note that in all these clips, I was walking naturally without employing the ninja walk. Consistent with our previous test results, the Z-axis stabilizer was the most effective at reducing the perceived bobbing effect. The footage came out looking really smooth, and I'm not sure I could actually achieve the same level of smoothness just by changing my footwork, considering I'm not a very skilled gimbal operator. Some Z-axis stabilizers also allow you to adjust the tension and add counterweights to further improve video smoothness. However, as you can see, I achieved pretty good results using the defaults on this cheap 4th axis stabilizer from Amazon. Slotting in between the Z-axis stabilizer and simply holding the camera handheld is the selfie stick technique. While it wasn't quite as smooth as the Z-axis stabilizer, it still provided a noticeable improvement compared to filming without it. In some ways, it's a more versatile tool than the Z-axis stabilizer, because in addition to reducing bobbing, you can also use it to get high angle and low angle shots, and it's a bit less fiddly to use. However, do note that you will need to extend it out a bit, which can be impractical in smaller spaces or when you're navigating through larger crowds. I also wanted to mention that the most dolly-like or drone-like footage actually came when I was running with the Osmo Pocket 3 on the end of a selfie stick. The resulting video was remarkably smooth, almost buttery in its fluidity. In contrast, running with the Z-axis stabilizer produced jerkier footage. This might be attributed to the spring being calibrated for walking rather than running, but whatever the cause, the Z-axis stabilizer offered less improvement over handheld footage when running. This unexpected result is a reminder that different tools may be optimal for different types of movement or shooting styles. Now, you may also be wondering why not just stabilize in post. If we can live with the slight image cropping and high shutter speed requirement, then surely this would save us a lot of hassle. However, it turns out that reducing the up and down bobbing motion in post is very difficult. I tried using DaVinci Resolve stabilizing tools and other software like Video Topaz AI, but none of them were able to reduce the bobbing in any meaningful way. It seems that correcting this type of motion is quite hard when the camera itself is moving forward and we don't have access to gyro data. I even tried using GyroFlow software by attaching my Insta360 Go 3 as an external gyro sensor. However, I quickly realized this wouldn't actually work because, unlike with a bigger gimbal, it's not possible to actually attach the Go 3 to the moving gimbal head, meaning that the gyro data would be inconsistent with the scene's optical flow. So it would appear that it's difficult to effectively reduce the bobbing motion in post. If any of you have managed to reduce the bobbing motion in post, please let me know in the comments, but otherwise it seems like this bobbing problem needs to be dealt with when you're actually recording. In conclusion, both the Z-axis stabilizer and the selfie stick method offer effective ways to enhance the quality of your walking videos, particularly when the ninja technique isn't really feasible. These tools provide a practical solution for smoother footage without requiring constant attention to your walking style. That said, it's worth noticing that for casual purposes like travel vlogs, the footage from a handheld Osmo Pocket 3 is generally sufficient. The natural stabilization provided by your hands and arm movements often yields acceptable results for most viewers. Unfortunately, the bobbing motion can become a distraction when the camera is mounted on your backpack. Personally, I mostly only mount my Osmo Pocket 3 when I'm biking, where this issue doesn't arise. For walking, I usually hand-hold the Pocket 3 since I generally have my hands free anyway and can better control where I'm pointing the camera. However, from now on, I think I'll also consider chucking the camera on a Z-axis stabilizer or selfie stick if I'm looking for something even smoother.